I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No directives. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. So I included in my report a link to Beyond the Badge in case you're interested in watching this. I recently had the privilege of representing the Marlborough Public Schools in an episode of Beyond the Badge, a show hosted by Middlesex Sheriff Peter Katusian, along with the Executive Director of Middlesex Partnerships for Youth, Margie Daniels. It was a privilege to talk about the intersection of the education and public safety, the changing needs of our country schools, and programs available for local educators and law enforcement personnel. I wanted to also bring you up to speed on the addition of the lead counselors in the district. They have not yet been posted. The 4 positions were recently advocated for by Supervisor of Counseling Services Sharon Buckley, presented to the negotiation subcommittee of the school committee, and discussed with the MEA. An MOU has been signed by both President Brendan St. George and the superintendent, clearing the path for these postings. Essentially, there is no reduction in the load of these teachers. The stipend is much like the lead teachers at the middle school. They will act as liaisons to make sure that there's articulation between middle and high school counselors to ensure college and career readiness, and to meet regularly with the supervisor of counseling. So these 4 would be a school adjustment counselor at the elementary level, 1, a school adjustment counselor at the secondary level, 1, a guidance counselor at the middle, 1, and a guidance counselor at the high school, 1. We have had a lot of press about the Workforce Skills Capital Grant. Just recently, we received $343,376 for our Advanced Pathway program at the high school. We were one of 4 comprehensive districts. Most of the recipients were vocational schools or community colleges. And this is the second time we have been awarded this grant, so it's much appreciated. Also, you have all been aware of the visit we had last week by Governor Baker to the high school, and the focus of this visit was not so much on the STEM program as much it was to look at the early college program. He toured through, and many of you were there as well, 2 early college classes. One was an English composition class, and the other was a psychology class. At the end, he was presented with a Marlborough Way shirt by Principal Caleri, as well as a really nice plaque that was designed by our students using equipment from the Capital Skills Grant that we had been awarded the previous year. I also wanted to bring you up to speed on initiatives that we have underway that we're partnering with the city clerk. During Panther Period on October 16th, our city clerk, Lisa Thomas, oversaw the registration of 48 new voters from Marlborough High School. She and actually President Clancy has visited about 20 classrooms the week before to prepare the students, as well as to give them packets of information about voting in the city and the trends that have been seen. This was a great partnership. We're next partnering with the city clerk's office, looking at something called a peek at the polls on November 7th. We're looking to enlist the services of some 10th graders, even though it is a day off from school, to come to the polls, specifically at Richer School, to raise their civic awareness. I also wanted to thank Supervisor of Humanities Jody Reyes and the 10th grade history teachers who assisted in this effort. Included in your packet is the district improvement plan. The district improvement plan was only up through 2017, so looking ahead, last year in January we began work and slotted folks on the standards committee to review the previous 2014-2017 district improvement plan. And then committees went off to work on their own, divvying up the work. We came back together in June to review a draft. Drafts were reviewed over the summer by Assistant Superintendent Mary Murphy and the superintendent. Contained in this section is the final working, and I'm going to call it draft because I welcome your suggestions. I know, and I'm looking at Mrs. Matthews, I know there are probably errors or errant periods, so please send me those. We can work on that together. I welcome. But I also would ask, if you have larger questions, I'm happy to take those questions and work with the co-chairs to make sure that we have a document that represents the work of the committees and that will be our guiding document for the next several years. Included as well in the report is the NESDEC enrollment data. I know that recently conversation has been occurring around enrollment, specifically at the charter schools, and I wanted you to see this is concurrent with the October 1st enrollment that was reported to the state. And I think it's a nice picture. We often wonder how many are choiced out, how many are out of district, how many are in private schools, how many are at Assabet, and so on. Happy to answer questions on that as well. In addition, in the packet is an article that appeared in the Worcester Business Journal about a month ago around our STEM program, and I include that there for your perusal if you have not already seen it. Also like to welcome Christine Martinelli to the table this evening, who will be functioning as the school committee secretary this evening, taking the notes. So welcome, Christine.
Welcome.
Two more quick points that are not in my report formally. I would like to welcome you, and school committee has been invited to a sign ceremony that will take place at 2:30 at the new Marlborough High School sign on Bolton Street. This sign was made possible through donations of the Vision family as well as the class of 2015 and 16. So you may have noticed the beautiful stonework and the plaques that have been laid in there. So the formal dedication, if you will take place on Friday. And one at 2:30, if I didn't mention that, at 2:30. One more comment, and that is I would like to recognize an event that occurred in our district just recently, and that is the passing of Shelley Kennedy Leonard, who was a guidance counselor, both at the high school and the middle school. And I'm going to read something that Principal Daniels put in his read. Attending the funeral of a colleague, especially someone as young and vibrant as Shelley Kennedy Leonard, can be nothing but sad, and she was 45 years old. When joined by more than 50 colleagues from Marlborough, lining the steps into and out of the church as requested by the family, the sadness is softened, the pride in our profession and in the Whitcomb and MPS community filled an empty place in my heart. Thank you to all who were able to attend. Thanks to our entire community who came together to ensure that the education of our students was not interrupted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Maureen, when, in terms of the district improvement plan, when's the next deadline? When do you want people to respond to you by?
I would love, thank you for bringing that up. I would love to have a final product within the next week to week and a half so that it could be attached to the district website. But if I'm certainly willing to take any additions that you have. I know how busy people are. If you'd like to get together after you review it, Mrs. Matthew, I'm happy. But let's say by November 3rd, we'll be at the Cape for a couple of days then for the joint conference. But if November 3rd could be a deadline, if you have an issue with that deadline and need an extension, please let me know.
Okay, and just remind me, we don't have to vote on the...
No. And additionally, on November 28th, the SIPs would be presented. The SIPs are derived from the DIP. Mm-hmm. The DIP is the district improvement plan. The SIPs are the specific school improvement plans. Those as well will be presented for information, but not a vote. I need to approve them. The principals are sending them to me prior to my sending them to you in the packet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Ms. Hennessy.
Thanks. Just about the lead counselors, with the one being at elementary, curious about how that's all going to kind of work out. Will they just be floating around to try and make sure that they're on top of, with only one elementary, and they're, 3 different schools that they're
Sure.
trying to manage?
Yes, actually 4, when you
Well,
count the
4,
ECC.
exactly, that's true with
Right.
ECC, you're right.
Right, right now they don't have anything.
Right.
So we're at the table with the MEA, so.
To try and see how.
To try and
can all
see how
be-
this goes. I don't want to call it a pilot year, because we have approved the MOU, but this was recommended. The actual request came from the school adjustment counselors themselves.
Yeah.
Mary and I talked about it with them. We went to one of the meetings, talked about it with Sharon Buckley, and then we sat down with the negotiating subcommittee. You know, I would assume it's going to be on professional development days,
Yep.
through meetings with Mrs. Buckley, emails, face-to-face, after school.
I'm appreciative of it, because I think if you remember, whenever we started the
Yes.
discussion about the job description
Yes.
for the director, that was a concern that I had early
Absolutely.
on, was that we needed to make sure it was across the board.
Absolutely.
Not just in 6 to 12, because initially it was only discussed from a 6 to 12. So I'm happy to see that
No.
there is a way of putting the thread through the whole way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have another question, sorry. So when does this go into effect?
It did, October 1, right?
The
Well, you
lead
have to post it,
counselors?
yes. You have to post
It hasn't been posted yet. There are some questions from the school adjustment counselors, so Mrs. Buckley and I are meeting with them on Thursday to iron out just some questions they have before the posting. But the posting should go up Friday. The posting was approved. We'll get that up soon, and then Mrs. Buckley and principals will interview internal candidates. This is only an internal post.
And I presume it would only be open to people who are in those positions?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And where is the money coming from for the stipends?
Where's the money coming from? This is turnover savings. I mean, it's very
We-
minimal.
A lot of our stipends for some of the high school activities, we underspend that pretty consistently every year because the clubs don't run, and they're actually very similar to the stipends that we're talking about. So it's kind of easy to kind of transfer that money over.
This is a $10,000 total, split among the 4, so.
Thanks.
Sorry, one last, thank you. Relative to the NESDEC numbers, thank you very much for the information. I appreciate it after the enrollment numbers that I was asking about for AMSA as well. Curious, relative to the choiced out charter magnet school number and the out-of-place educational student, special education students, is that able to be broken out any further?
Yes, I do have some backup data with that I obtained from Linda Weintraub. I'm happy to, if you have specifics, I do have AMSA numbers, I do have those who are choiced out to Hudson. There's a lot of one-off choice outs, but the
Yeah, I'm
bulk
just
of it-
trying, I think
Yep.
it just would be helpful so that we can kind of start looking at our tracking a little bit. So if there's a way, just at some point I can get
Sure.
those numbers from you, I'd
Happy to.
appreciate it.
Happy to. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I apologize to the committee. I do not have transfers tonight. I will have them at the next meeting. I need to reclassify some expenditures to some grants before I do the transfers, so I can see exactly how much money I need to do it. I was going to bring it to this meeting, but again, I apologize I don't have them ready. So on to tonight's report. We did get the bid for transportation. It was delayed 2 weeks because we did an addendum out to the folks. We did receive one bid. And again, we did this in conjunction with Hudson Public Schools. We went out together, and we both only received one bid from one vendor, who's our current vendor, North Reading Transportation. I've put the current pricing of what we currently have and then what the bid pricing was that we got in. To satisfy our requirements under law, we do have to go out to bid, because we have to, before I bring the extension to you, I have to prove to you that we've tested the market in a way that satisfies Chapter 30B, which is our procurement law. So as you can see, if our contract was ending at the end of this year and moving into next year, we would have some pretty significant price increases. Not as bad as I anticipated, actually. I just want to share some data points with you. So of the 33 contracts that have recently been settled in Massachusetts, the average price for a big bus is $377. So the bid price we got was $345. It's actually about 10% less than that. And a lot of the districts around us, for example, Framingham, Leominster, they're paying more than $400 a bus. So depending on where you are in the state, there tends to be some aggressive pricing from the vendors. So even though this is quite a price increase, the school committee holds the sole option to extend the contract you're currently in for 2 years. The contract is extended at CPI, not to exceed 2.5%. So the good news is we still have 2 more years of probably some of the best pricing in the state that I've seen. The bad news is we know at the end of 2 years, we're going to be facing a bump. There's definitely going to be a bump in pricing for transportation.
I'm going to get the sidewalks done before that.
That would be really helpful, thank you. So what we, over the next 2 years, I think it would be helpful for the committee to start to look at some of the issues of our policies around transportation on the basically unlimited ridership. I know it's a hot topic. I'm bringing it up now for 2 years from now to kind of look at, do we want to establish certain zones which are walking zones? Can we do that? Is it effective? There's a lot of discussion to be had because at the pricing that I'm seeing, that would have a significant impact on our budget going into FY21. We'd be looking at close to $500,000 of an increase in busing. So I am going to recommend to you, it's in the second part of the meeting agenda, to extend the current contract with North Reading that we currently have, but I wanted you to see the pricing that we've received. So that's the first part. The second part of my report is I've included the food service balances from last year as well as this year, just to make a comparison. I still feel that we're still in the same range. There's a slight bump in this year, but I also looked back to next month for last year. That's a confusing sentence. I looked at November of last year, of 2016, and we're still well under that, because in November of 2016, we had just about $2,100 in debt from the cafeteria, and we're currently setting, I checked it today, we're currently at about $1,800. So we're still doing pretty good as far as being in the same limits of where we were last year. So I wanted you to be able to see that as well. We are currently working on the level services budget for FY19 in the business office. I'll be working with the superintendent to prepare a draft budget schedule for the school committee for your review and approval, and I hope to have pieces of that to you very soon. The budget this year is going to be a little bit different because we have all of our bargaining agreements up for negotiation. So a lot of the funding will be tied into salary reserve because we don't have any agreements yet. So that it may look a little bit different than in years past, but we're getting to work on it and trying to determine what the level service budget will be that we can present. So I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Questions from the committee, Mrs. Hennessy?
Thank you. Question, would it be possible if we were to move forward on the extension for the transportation, is there a way of trying to get some data about tracking our ridership in different zones so that we can at least have a little bit of information to work off of?
That's actually a really good question. I've proposed to the superintendent, one of my goals this year is to create a bus pass system district-wide. They've already done it very well at the elementary level, and I think they have a really excellent program at the elementary level. I think we need to duplicate that for the middle and high school. So not exactly the same way. They don't need to be color tagged, and we don't need to line all the kids up in the hallways. But I think having a bus pass system at the middle and high will help us predict usage a lot better way before September and allow us to look at some of those routes. Because we are 3-tiered busing, we end up using a lot of the buses with the high school, also with IC. And then the middle school, we use all the buses. And then at the elementary, we use all the buses. So when we look at that system, I want to see, is there certain buses that are just very, underutilized?
Right.
And without making too much or too long of a ride for students.
Right.
We always try to keep them, around 35 minutes at the most. In the beginning of school, it's a little bit more. I hate to see rides go above 45 minutes. I don't think that's great. But if we can do things like that by utilizing bus passes, I think that'd be helpful.
Thank you. I would really appreciate it because I think we'd have better data to then make more informed decisions about our buses in a couple years. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? You said Leominster and Framingham have got those $400 bids or what they're paying.
Recently.
Do you know if Leominster has school choice like Framingham does? Like, is the reason that theirs is higher? I mean, Framingham, they have school choice. They have kids from every neighborhood going to any school they want, as long as they get in on the lottery.
In-
So they're busing kids, you know.
Generally, it's the labor
It's a-
cost. Yeah, so what happens is for
Crazy.
most of busing, the capital cost is pretty much the same for all the companies. What it comes down to is the labor cost. So if you see a very high cost, like for example, when I saw Leominster at 457, they might be running more than 3 tiers. So if they're running that could be, one of the costs that are associated with that.
And did you say they do have school choice, or you don't know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I assume they do.
Leominster?
Yeah.
They do? Oh, okay. So, that-
You say labor costs. They pay based on the availability of help in the different districts. So if we have a big labor pool, we may pay less than a smaller labor pool in Leominster?
Yeah, we're paying less than they're paying in Hudson.
Okay.
And so it's the driver, some of the drivers they're not covered by prevailing wage in this area. Closer to Metro Boston, they'll be covered under prevailing wage, which is a totally different ballgame. The prevailing wage law is, well, I shouldn't get into that, but but it raises the cost increases pretty substantially if you're a prevailing wage district. So the larger your district, the more likely you're a prevailing wage district, and that there already might be a collective bargaining agreement for that labor. So we're currently not there. So our labor costs are less.
but we don't, the bus drivers are not our employees.
Correct.
Anymore. They used to be, but they're not, right?
they're not.
No.
So what about these other high districts? Are they
Well-
also?
Yeah, I could tell you, for some of the larger districts, they might have a local collective bargaining agreement that they're under,
Yeah.
and they might be under prevailing wage as well. So all of these ones that I mentioned are all private companies, but some of the laws still apply to those private companies when they're providing transportation, such as prevailing wage. If the community is large enough, there's enough citizens in the community, they jump into that realm, and they have to provide that as a minimum.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Matthews?
Just an observation, since we have the historical data from year to year, it seems like Jarwick has a harder time collecting than any other building.
Something I can work on with Principal
Kids.
Sanborn.
It is the biggest school.
It's an observation, that's all I said.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Public participation. Any public participation? Public participation. Mr. Bergeron.
I'm asking the committee to act on the extension. It's your sole discretion for the contract with North Reading Transportation for the next 2 years. We have a 2-year extension at CPI, not to exceed 2.5%. Just so you know, the CPI for this year coming in was 2.2%. That's what our contract increase was. So due to the pricing that we currently is very favorable to the district, I am asking the school committee to approve an extension for 2 years for North Reading Transportation, and then I'll handle the contract documents from there.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion?
Actually, I have one. This is for the 2 years? Or just, do we have to do this again next year?
It's just once.
It's once for the 2 years.
It doesn't prevent us from going back out to bid again next year, just to see if the rates are changing, because we can always test the market, but it would lock us in at a minimum for 2 years' worth of pricing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Donations, donorchoice.org, Richard School Library, $500.
Motion to accept.
Motion made and seconded to accept. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Intel Volunteer Grant Program, Whitcomb School Student Activities, $395.
Motion to accept.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Reports of subcommittees. No? Mrs. Matthews.
We have received a letter from the MEA, and we'll be starting negotiations with them in a couple of weeks. Thank you. And,
To be wrapped up before Thanksgiving.
Certainly,
Thank you.
from your lips to, and I have signed the warrant.
Any other reports? Seeing none, members forum. Ms. Hennessy.
Happiness that the kids arrived home from Akaruno, and really want to thank Rupa Patel, Jack Panier, Laura Henderson, who need to come home a little early due to Shelley's services and such, and as well Nancy Klein for many years of leadership with that program. But the kids just literally arrived home under an hour ago, happy and tired, but great experience. So there you go.
Any other members? Ms. Matthews.
I was hoping to just throw out a discussion regarding things that I know we're going to talk about, but not everybody's going to be at the conference. Gentlemen.
Excuse me?
No, those gentlemen, not you. You will be there. But I know, we're a quarter of the way into the year already. And I know we have many things that you have a district improvement plan and you're going to present SIPs. But I was thinking maybe we should try and put a workshop meeting together that allows everybody to talk about what we learned at MASC for those who didn't attend, and also to kind of streamline some goals that I think we all need to talk about too. I know I have some concerns relative to MCAS, relative to schedules, relative to implementation of different positions and things. And how we collectively, and I think we just need to, so that we're not crossing the line, but at least. So, sure. I just wanted to throw it out there for
No,
everybody.
absolutely. I think Ms. Bowden-Henninger was mentioning the same thing and wrote it down and was going to discuss it.
Sorry,
so-
we didn't talk, so.
Signal.
Thoughts, right. I was going to request that we look at having a workshop meeting. I've been increasingly aware that other districts on a regular basis have strategic goals set for their school committee that we have not historically done, and I think that
a good idea.
might be actually helpful in some of the discussions that we have, so that we can be referring back to our goals as a way of looking forward. And I'm happy to grab some goals that other districts, because I've been kind of looking at them, so I can make those available, to the committee prior. And I feel like sometimes we, I feel like there is room for us to be more proactive in some of the direction that the district goes in, that we kind of sit back and don't really take. And I think that setting goals will be helpful in.
Well, I think it also makes our evaluation a little bit.
There's self-evaluation.
Right.
And there don't have to be 57 items to be evaluating ourselves on. The other thing that I was interested in, at some point, I know it's premature, but I will be interested in seeing an update on the new ELL positions and how they're going, with, certainly we're going to need to have more information at the November 14th? Meeting relative to MCAS, but I am, interested in seeing, we kind of put all our eggs in one basket this year with the hopes that they're going to, that the basket's going to pay off. And I have high hopes that it will, but I am interested in hearing more about that, understanding that it's a little premature for that, but it's something
Will
to.
do.
That's it.
Any other members? Any other members?
Anybody else wants to be formed?
No. Entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you very much.